In this video, we're going to take a look at our beautiful 1998 Sea Ray 370 Sundancer, and I'm going to tell you why we had to go to a different country on multiple occasions just to be able to find a boat like this. Now, the boat that we had prior to that was another 1998 Sea Ray Sundancer. However, that was a smaller model, but it didn't have all the features that we were looking for, and that's why we upgraded to the 370 Sundancer. So you ask yourself, what precipitated that change? Well, it was actually precipitation in the form of rain. Say that again.
So nothing better than rainy days on the boat.
Cheers to that.
For anybody who does a lot of cruising in their boat, you know that rainy days are the best times just to kick back and do nothing. And when I say doing nothing, it means get out the phone and start looking at used boats on boats.com. Just see what's on the market. And on this particular day, this actual day, I discovered some nice 370 Sundancers, just on the off chance that we might consider maybe upgrading at some point in time.
But what I was saying is that, yes, eventually we will have a bigger boat. I mentioned that to you in the past. I've been looking at a couple of different models. Of course, going to be another Sea Ray. But we kind of zeroed in and come into an agreement on what the next boat's going to be, and I'm not going to let you know because I don't want to influence the market, so shall we say. So that's 2 years down the road.
And by the time the sun came out that day, I think we had pretty much set our sights on the 370 Sundancer. But of course not right away, as we weren't in the market at that time. This was just some future thinking with the plans on actually getting another boat, maybe in 2 years. As you can see, that 330 Sundancer was in beautiful condition by the time we had sold it. And being a sucker for punishment, I had fixed, repaired, replaced, and just upgraded everything on that boat during the 6 seasons that we had it. And that included replacing the waste holding tank, hot water heater, full overhaul on the vacuum flush system, installed a water purification system, and a beautiful extended swim platform. And yes, let's not forget a brand new high-field inflatable dinghy with a brand new 9.9 Yamaha outboard, plus a semi-custom davit system that I installed. And despite having that with us for our 3-week holidays, that dinghy didn't get used once. And we ended up selling the boat, motor, whole package with less than 10 hours runtime on it. The thing wasn't even broken in. We decided to sell it. And eventually, why not? Let's sell the Sea-Doo and sell the boat and look for a bigger boat. Well, looking for that bigger boat proved to be more of a challenge than we had anticipated. And even though we've bought boats in the past that have provided, let's say, some challenges, and this one's going to take us down many roads, and we're going to put on a lot of miles and have a lot of frustrations just trying to find the right boat, or at least find a boat that's actually worthy of buying. Well, we'll start with the first one. This one we found immediately after selling the 330, and this is a 370 Sundancer, the boat that we were hoping to buy. However, it was located in New York State. And for those of you who are not familiar with the channel, our home base is in Ontario, Canada. So to get to that boat, we had to cross an international border, of course, going down to the United States. However, the problem at that time, and let me make this perfectly clear, please listen, this was back in 2021. And what I'm going to tell you here was as a result of COVID restrictions during the pandemic, and had nothing to do with political decisions or, let's just say, policy changes in the United States. And the problem was, like I said, there was COVID restrictions, and we were not allowed to enter the United States if it wasn't for business or medical reasons and stuff like that. And my argument was with the border security guy that I talked to, who was very, very accommodating, or at least tried to be very accommodating. He was very understanding. He says, sorry, this is a no-go. I said, well, I can argue that it is a business transaction because we're going to buy a boat, potentially, which would bring money into the United States. So in my mind, that's business. And he just, no. If it was up to me, maybe, but no, I'm sorry. These are the rules and we have to abide by them. So he says, I'd love to help you out, but I can't. And he goes, you're going to be denied entry into the United States. And I said, hold on a second. We passed by a welcome to New York sign on the side of the road. So in my mind, we're already in New York. And he says, no, you're not in New York and you're not in the United States until I say so. So sorry. So no problem. We understood the situation. And like I say, we were escorted out and back across the border, again, in my mind, into Canada. Now, that was probably a good thing because ultimately, since we couldn't get into the United States and since we couldn't go and physically look at the boat in person, I was able to find a local to that area marine surveyor who said yes, for a fee, he would go look at the boat, take lots of pictures. We could do like a FaceTime live video chat, not a problem. So I had that all set up to go. However, that would have been a moot point until we actually made a deal on the boat. So we put in an offer, and this was a problem. The so-called broker slash sales was extremely unprofessional. And when I say unprofessional, that doesn't even begin to scratch the surface. And I'm just going to share with you a copy of the contract that he sent me. And if anybody called this a contract, I mean, I phoned him up and I said, no way, man. I said, this will not go. I said, this isn't a contract. I said, there's not even a name of you, your company, your marina, anything. I said, the only names on there are my name. There's no serial number for the boat. There's hardly a description for the boat. And to top that off, they wanted a $400 non-refundable deposit for time spent on the deal. And I said to the guy, like, what are you talking about? He goes, well, we're going to put a lot of time into this. And he says, I've had a number of calls with you and emails back and forth and so on and so forth. So he says, we have some investment in this, so we got to get paid for it. I said, no way. I said, nah. I said, that's not going to work. I said, there's no way I'm going to abide by that. I'm not going to pay you money ahead of time, which has nothing to do with the sale of the boat, or the purchase of the boat, I should say, to pay you for your time to deal with a customer. I said, no. I said, it would be no different than if you were looking to buy a house and you were dealing with a real estate agent and you went and looked at 1 or 2 or 10 or 100 different homes. And the real estate agent says, well, you're going to have to pay me $100 or $400 to drive you around and look at the houses. No, it doesn't work that way. I said an agent, or you as the broker, get paid when the deal is done. You get a commission out of the sale. And I said, until then, you're working on goodwill, basically, that you're going to get something out of the deal. So we're not going to pay that. Well, I'm going to have to get back to my boss and see what he says. I said, well, I'm going to tell you right now. I said, if this is going to be how it's going to be, it ain't going to be, because I'm not paying you $400 for nothing. Needless to say, there was some back and forth, and we felt bad about the situation. Like, it was sketchy. There was so many unanswered questions, like direct questions about the boat, the marina, the brokerage, and I was not getting any answers at all. Like, I was getting no answers. So I'll get back to you. I'll have to let you know type of stuff. So we just said, forget it, the hell with it, and walk away. I'm going to say that boat was probably had some serious issues. And anyways, I'm just going to leave it at that. And please don't ask me what the marina was. All I'm going to say is it was the northern part of, let's say the northeastern part of New York State. So we're back at square one, and this time we decided to stay in Ontario to look at a boat local because, of course, we couldn't travel to the States to look at anything. But when I say local, this boat was on Lake Huron, so it's still 3.5-4 hour drive from our home base, so it was quite a hike. And once again, unfortunately, when we got there, the boat that we saw did not match the description whatsoever, and it was way overpriced, and it was a walk away. Now, just for fun, on our way home back from looking at that boat, we happened to drive by this old motel on the side of the road, which we instantly recognized from a television series on Netflix. But let me know in the comments if you recognize this place.
When it's time to lay down your weary head, you'll find comfort and safety at the partially renovated Rosebud Motel.
So time marched on, and so did our seemingly never-ending road trip to find our next boat. And this time it took us down to the big city of Toronto, where there was a 370 Sundancer that was still in the water. However, one more time, this boat was more of a disappointment than anything, and a lot of overselling from the salesman. So a couple of things I got to mention. The broker was there, of course, to show us the boat. As soon as we stepped in, there was an overwhelming smell, the same as the prior boat that we looked at, of not Febreze, but just these things that you can, like candles that you can light or whatever it is, to try to mask bad smells. And for me, those perfumey smells or candle smells combined with the stink on the boat makes it just a gross situation. So I was right away, boom, turned off, like, what is it, mold in here? What are you trying to hide? So whatever, we were there, we're going to look at the boat, and I pointed out a couple of things to the salesman, questions about the boat that were, like I say, they looked at kind of a couple of things that were questionable and looked sort of sketchy. And his only reply was, oh, the seller put in this amazing stereo system. Check it out. Look, there's speakers, subwoofers, amplifiers here, there, and all over. And I looked at the guy and I shook my head. I said, the last thing I'm interested in looking about is a stereo. I can buy one off the shelf anywhere and put in a stereo myself. I want to make sure that the boat is solid and good and well maintained. So what does he do? Boom, out with his phone, and he's flipping through, I don't know, looking at Facebook posts and all that. And after that, he basically ignored us. I had a couple questions and I got like, type of answers, or I don't know, or I'll have to get back to you, which again was a total turnoff. And I'm going to just point out one more thing. I'll zoom in on this. Look at that. That is just the corner of the door, just a corner of the door that goes into the washroom, into the head. And when I saw it in person, I looked at it, and again, something I questioned about, and I said, wow, that's a lot of damage to that door. He goes, oh, not easy. Use, some little bit of hardware, you can patch that. Yeah, okay, right on. It looked like that door had been kicked out from the inside. I said, no, man, you can't patch that door. That door has to be rebuilt, or better yet, replaced, or also walk away from this boat, because who knows what's going on in here, that somebody was trapped in the bathroom, locked in the bathroom, had to kick the door out from the inside. And again, just looking around, the boat had, it was rough. So that was another, thank you very much for your time. I'll let you know. And we walked away from that one. Now with October on the horizon and not being able to find anything locally, we're back to the interwebs and trying to expand our horizons a little bit. So we started looking a little bit closer at this one, which was not the model of boat that we were looking for. We were looking at a 370 Sundancer, but this was a 400 Sundancer, and it looked good. Again, it looked good on paper, it looked good in the ad. Now, even though this boat was in Ohio, the seller was super accommodating. I explained to him, I said, listen, we can't cross the border. We can't come to look at that boat. So anything that you can provide to me before the boat comes out of the water. And he said, no problem. So what he did was, when he took the boat over for winter haul out, he actually took these video clips from, and even included a copy of that day's USA Today. So it came to mind as a ransom situation where they show a hostage and holding up today's newspaper to show that that person is still alive and is okay, with the newspaper just to validate that. So what he did was include the newspaper and took these video clips of the boat underway, starting the boat, starting the generator, starting the AC units with the boat at a slow cruising speed, underway, and it was awesome. It was great. So we came to an agreement on price. We made a deal. It was all good, subject to us actually going to physically look at the boat once the border was open. And of course, sea trial and survey and all that stuff. And he was all good about it, very, very accommodating. But unfortunately, as soon as I was ready to send him some money as a deposit, sign a contract, nothing. Crickets. Days turned into a couple of weeks, and he was not replying to me. And I was like, what is going on? Like, here's the boat. We want to buy the boat. It was a little bit beyond what we were hoping to spend, but the boat looked good all around. So this is going to be our boat. So when he finally did reply to me, he apologized. He says, I know we had a deal, but I'm sorry, I'm going to have to back away from this. And I decided not to sell the boat because he couldn't find another boat that he wanted to buy. Because, he wasn't selling this boat to get out of boating. He was selling this boat to get that next boat. And he says there's nothing on the market that interests him. And he was fearful of selling the boat and then not having another boat for next year. So he says, I'm just taking it off the market. Of course, that was super depressing for Anchor Girl and I. We're all hyped up about getting this boat. But alas, once again, no deal was to be had. So October turned to November, November turned to winter, and we were still without a boat. Not a very pleasant situation to be in, and even little Tiny was starting to get sad about it. Christmas came and went. Winter got colder. The snow was falling, and we were now firmly in winter's grasp without a boat. But boy, how quickly things changed for us as this boat came out of nowhere. But I'm lying, because this boat actually came out of a Sea Ray plant in Florida. Well, my friends, I come to you from a snowy boat slip at the marina. I've trudged through a foot or more of snow because I had to let you know the fantastic news. Yes, we have finally bought a boat. Yeah, so the boat that found us was a 1998 Sea Ray 370 Sundancer. Now, this was the exact boat that we were looking for. the right model, the right year, and most importantly, it hadn't been molested by previous owners. This one was as true to how it came out of the factory. Out of all of them that we've seen, the only alterations that have been done to this boat was the stereo system upgrade. Now again, given the travel restrictions between Canada and the US at the time, we weren't able to get to see that boat in person. Thankfully, the broker that we dealt with was above board and really super helpful with us. Give us lots of insight, lots of phone calls with him, of course, and lots of photos as well. Beyond that, I was really lucky to find an excellent surveyor. And being familiar with that vintage of Sea Ray, having owned a couple prior to this, I was aware already of where the problem areas were. So I brought that up with a surveyor and said, please look at this and that. Of course, going on a 25-year-old boat, there was a couple of things that came up in the survey. So we had lots of confidence in that boat, insofar as what it might have needed for us to upgrade it and get it to where we want it to be. So we bought that boat 100% sight unseen, if you can believe that. I'm sure you can only imagine how exciting it was for me to get to the boat and step on board it for the very first time. The first step on the new boat. Just got here. Just got here. Oh yeah, look at that beautiful boat. Look at that big, beautiful boat. Well, I like it already. This is it. The first view of this thing. First time touching stuff. Oh, it's so awesome. Okay, I literally just got here. I literally just stepped on the boat. I just got to the marina. So leave this with me and I will get back to you. I'm going to check a few things because they are closing the doors in like 20 minutes. They're closing at 4 and it is 3:43. I gotta move. All right, I'll talk to you in a bit. Now on this first trip, there was still some unanswered questions about travel restrictions, so I went by myself. Anchor Girl stayed home just in case. And due to the fact that I only had a couple of days, my first day there was no more than maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours on the boat. Because by the time I did the 7-hour drive from home down there, I actually had to get a COVID test, if you can believe it. Not to enter the States, but for my re-entry back into Canada. Yeah, that was so much fun those days. So just to give Anchor Girl a better sense on the dimensions and how big the boat was, I took some video clips of myself sitting here, there, and all over, wandering around the boat. And like I say, just to give her a better idea of how big the boat was. Because this boat was quite a step up for us from our previous 330 Sundancer. Okay, I just got to show you this. I've been on the boat for over 2 hours, 2.5 hours. I'm still digging through stuff, but look at this. There's all this paperwork left here. Where do I put this? This is such a bonus for me. The spare parts and stuff. But anyways, look at that. The original Sea Ray owner's manual. Wow. This is like gold.
That's gold, Jerry. Gold!
Look at that. Warranty copy from the original back in day one. 26 February 98. When it was first registered. All that details. It's awesome. So a couple weeks later I was able to return, and thankfully Anchor Girl came with me for her first visit down to see the boat. And yeah, that was pretty awesome. We're back. There.
I'll get the number off.
Yep. On day one, say how beautiful this boat is and how much you love this boat.
Thank you.
Not only that, the whole experience with getting this boat, having to travel to another country to do it, and yeah, it was so much fun. It was so inspiring. See if you can see me. I might have to zip this thing this way a little bit. I was trying to get the water in the background because it is pretty here in Sandusky, Ohio. And our, my second visit to Boogaboo and Anchor Girl's first comes to an end. Anchor Girl loves the boat too. I don't know if she loves it as much as me, but I'm very happy about that. We're gonna be so happy with this boat. But again, as Anchor Girl keeps telling me, this is gonna probably be our last boat. Given the fact that this is probably our last boat, it's awesome that it's an adventure, and I'm so glad we got the boat here and that we had to travel so far to get to the boat and do all of this, because if we just bought the boat in our marina or next door or whatever, it wouldn't have been the same. So
in that respect, I'm really, really grateful.
So another short visit. Yeah, we were there for 2 days, but again, long drive there, long drive back. And, and only having the weekends to do it, it would have been nice to have more time there, but we didn't. So the next leg of the journey was heading back home and waiting for a few weeks until the boat was actually going to be launched. So huge thanks to Sunrise Marina, the place where the boat was stored, as they were good enough to film the launch of the boat, which was awesome. That's why I'm so grateful that these guys stepped up, actually filmed the launch for me, and even posted on the YouTube channel, which was fantastic. We were able to see it like we were there. Awesome. And once they launched the boat, we were able to get back down there because we had one more outstanding item, was a sea trial. Now, since we had so much time to kill waiting for the boat to be launched, I was able to take advantage of that time and buy a bunch of new toys. I mean, necessary safety equipment for the boat in anticipation of getting it home and starting to get to work right away. Now, if you want to see all the work that I did to this boat and all the different projects, and it was extensive, from electronics to new flooring to canvas and on and on and on, please take a look down the video description, as I will leave a link to the playlist of all the work that I did and all the projects. So our final trip down to Sandusky, Ohio was so that we can see the boat in the water, start it up, make sure all the systems were running correctly, and of course do the sea trial. But again, things conspired against us, as Mother Nature was in no mood to let us take that boat out, because when we got there it was howling winds, ice cold, it was just above freezing, and there was huge gusty winds coming into the marina. Can you hear that? That is the wind. That is the wind that we have today. It is just crazy howling. I don't know why, but I do know why, because we want to do our sea trial today. So as I mentioned on the way in, if this keeps up, we're not going out there. It is freezing cold. There's white caps just beyond the break wall. And if worse comes to worse, I will just fire this up as I had her running yesterday, and put her in and out of gear just here on the dock, and I will be happy with that. I would be satisfied with that. So in the sake of prudence, safety, and not losing my mind, I decided to do my sea trial right on the dock. And with the boat tied to the dock, I just simply put it in and out of gear a number of times. Everything was performing as expected. All the gauges were reading correctly. The engines weren't overheating. Good water flow. Everything was good. And so that's how I did it. I just right tied to the dock, in and out of gear, and it was all beautiful. And the only issue that presented itself was a failed water pump on the generator. And that was resolved with a little bit of back and forth with the seller, as they agreed to cover the cost of a replacement pump. And I did the work myself. I replaced that pump once we got the boat home. So with everything good, we signed off on the deal, and the next step was to get in touch with my trailer guy and have him come down, pick up the boat, and move her up to her new home on Lake Simcoe. But of course, it couldn't go that smoothly, as there was one final hurdle for us to get through to get this boat home. Literally the day that the boat was coming over, I was at home just before leaving home, because I was going to meet the boat and the trailer guy at the designated spot where it was headed to. And I happened to go on my phone to look at, there's a live webcam at the border crossing. This is Fort Erie, Ontario, and it shows the trucks coming across the border. Now, what happens is when you're bringing a boat into Canada, a boat that's never been in Canada before, it's called importing a vessel. And to import a vessel into Canada, one is obliged to pay the sales tax on the sale price of that boat. Two ways to do it: drive it across with a trailer yourself and pay the tax right there at the border. Or in our prior case, we had bought a boat in 2010 in Michigan, but at that time we were driving the boat ourselves. And so I left Michigan and we came across to Ontario. When we landed on the Ontario side, we simply walked up to the border crossing and we paid the sales tax right then and there. However, in this case, as the boat was being transported by a trailer on the road, I had to hire what is called a customs broker and have him take care of paying the sales tax. So all the paperwork was to be filed through the customs broker, the sales tax paid, so that when the driver got there, and for whatever reason, nobody ever figured this out, he was told that there has to be an agricultural inspection on the boat before it can enter Canada legally. Of course, he didn't know what the hell that meant. He tells me this. I don't know what the hell that meant. Ultimately, what was determined was the form was either incorrectly filled out or somebody clicked the wrong box or checked off the wrong box. Nobody will ever know because nobody will ever admit that it was their mistake. And thankfully that issue was resolved and the boat was able to carry on. And luckily for us, it had a happy ending. Finally, at long last, the boat has cleared customs, cleared the border, and it's on its way to its new home.
Hi.
It's here, honey.
It's here.
Hoo-ha. And so again, after I don't know how many months of trials and tribulations, the boat finally arrived at its first stop. Remember, this was the first stop on the way home. And the first stop was to get new canvas put on it, as well as new carpet in the cockpit, all new carpet in the cabin, and then move on. So I took advantage of the fact that the boat was in a nice, heated, dry, stored area while the work was being done. And I started doing my work. And the first things I did was replace all the gaskets and the hatch seals and blah, 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 to make sure it was all nice and watertight before it went in the water. And this was the first time it had been in, as far as I know, Canadian waters. So there we are. It's official launch, because now it's on Lake Simcoe, our home waters. And the next stop was me driving it home for the very, very first time with my actual true sea trial. This is me taking it home to our marina and my first drive. And yes, I fell in love with that boat again. And I think to make up for all the frustrations that we have had up until this point, Mother Nature decided to really cooperate and give me a nice smooth ride. Look at that lake. I had to do probably a 25-mile run. It's not that far, but this Lake Simcoe can really build up if it's windy. So look at that. It was dead, flat, calm. Okay, let's go out there and see how pretty this lake is today. Oh man, could I have asked for a better day? I do not think so, my friends. I do not think. You know what? I know so. Look at that lake. The only ripples are from my wake from when I was slowing down. Stunning, stunning. So how long did this whole adventure take? From selling our last boat to finding this one and getting it home was a total of 263 days. And Google tells me that was just over 37 weeks. Yeah, it was sometimes frustrating, sometimes heartbreaking, sometimes very maddening. But at the end of the day, or I should say 263 days, it was well worth the effort and we were super happy with the boat. So I'm going to wind this one up here because this video is getting to be almost as long as this whole adventure took. And I'm just going to say that, yeah, there was a ton of work that we did, a ton of upgrades, and lots of fun and lots of travel with this boat. Now, as many of you already know, after 3.5 seasons, we sold this boat and we're already looking forward to the next adventure. And with any luck, the whole process might run a little bit smoother on that next one. And hey, you never know, I might even spring for a little bit more than just French fried potatoes to celebrate getting the new boat home. Until then, as always, I'll look forward to your comments and I will see you on the next one. Cheers!